You are live.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Easter, wherever you are. I want to send blessings to you. I'm lighting a little bit of smudge here. We got sage, some lavender, some eucalyptus, just clearing out the areas. And today we have an amazing guest. How many of you out there love your rocks? Ooh, so do we, right? So we have an expert on, and he comes from a different angle. He's not just another rock hound and rock lover that has books. No, he has books from scientific points of views. He has done a lot of personal research into these things and brings it forth in his books. So share out our show today. Whoever shares it out gets to win different different sessions with each of us. You know, we rotate, and whoever shared it out last week will be sharing the winner at the end of the show. And at the end of the show, if you have any crystal questions or even during the show, put them in the comments there and let us see them. And if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button for us and hit the notification bell. And today we're ready for a great show. We've got Bex Marie here. We've got Rhonda Elliott and Nicholas Pearson. So, Rhonda, will you introduce your guest to us?
Well, I stole Nicholas's. I was listening to Jim Harold on Paranormal Podcast, and he had Nicholas. He was interviewing Nicholas, and often when I find I really am drawn to a guest, I try to invite them on. And Nicholas was so kind, and he accepted our invitation. And I love crystals. I've loved them since I was younger, and so I think has Nicholas. And Nicholas is one of those people like he likes the geology. He's come from it. It's kind of come to you in a weird way. And this whole system. He's also an author, a prolific author. I think you have 4 or 5 books now, one on Reiki and a bunch of books on crystals, like the crystal archetypes and different ones. So Nicholas, can you tell us all about you in your little, like in a, sort of a Reader's Digest condensed version, your journey to get you here, and tell us about your new book, Crystal Basics, because it's gorgeous. It's just a beautiful book, like all your books, but this one's particularly accessible, I would say, for everyone.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure. I'm glad we're all Jim Harold fans. He does great stuff. But I started collecting crystals when I was about 8. Prior to that, I was that kid who picked up rocks everywhere he went. It could be some exotic place like my grandparents' backyard or, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Didn't matter. Equal opportunity rock hound here. And my grandfather saw this habit. He must have observed this. I think I was probably not as discreet as I thought I was. And when I was about 8, he gave me my first piece of quartz, which was from Hot Springs, Arkansas. And then my love of ordinary stone was transmuted into something maybe a little bit more refined. And I became a proper mineral lover. And I've been collecting ever since. When I was an adolescent, I was enrolled in a really rigorous academic background that kind of aimed to, we'll say, create the next generation of Renaissance people. So we had art and we had science and we had language and we had philosophy and all this other fun stuff. And I've always been a bit of a science nerd. I just love the earth sciences. So I, at the same time, was exploring metaphysical concepts and spirituality because I didn't grow up in a particularly religious household. So I sampled from the buffet of world religions, and I've always kind of loved folklore. And the folklore of gemstones was really easy to come across at that time. And it led me to find this curious little practice called crystal healing. And that gave me a chance to look at the intersection between the science of rocks and minerals, the folklore of rocks and minerals, and the energy medicine that they offer. And it's been a big part of my life ever since. I just released my 6th book, Crystal Basics, which you'll see over behind me. But I've got a few other titles out and hopefully a whole bunch more coming.
Awesome. Wow. You talk about crystal healing. Perhaps you could tell us just a little bit how crystals help us heal, and what is the science behind that?
Sure. First and foremost, it comes down to this idea that everything is, or at least interacts with, energy. The things that we think are pretty solid inert matter are really made of these tiny little particles and a whole bunch of empty space. And those particles are in this ecstatic dance. They're in constant motion. Now, systems that vibrate produce electromagnetic fields. So, that's true of our bodies, it's true of our electronics, it's true of the fibers in your carpet, as well as whatever beautiful gemstones you might have in your healing toolbox. And this dance that these particles are engaged in kind of tells us a lot about how those energy fields are formed and how they respond. So something like a human body, for example, is made out of a whole bunch of different parts and pieces that aren't necessarily on the same page at the same time. And, as well, they shouldn't. Your brain is not doing the same job as your stomach, your spleen. So they have to be engaged in different energetic qualities at the same time. So the electromagnetic field around the human body is in a sort of state of relative disorder most of the time. But if we look at something like beautiful piece of quartz or amethyst or calcite, the arrangement of its molecules, the very orderly and symmetrical and repeating structure that defines crystallinity, produces a very orderly energetic field. And fields that are of that magnitude, structured and rigorous and precise and perfect, give us an opportunity to create what we call coherence, where all the parts and pieces are marching in step, and coherent states are louder than incoherent states. So when we take a beautiful gemstone like this piece of rhodonite and introduce it to our electromagnetic field, it entrains us, it teaches us to be a little bit more crystalline on that electromagnetic level. And that has ramifications that make their way all the way down to our pathology and physiology. If we alter our electromagnetic field, we change our mood and our perception, which alerts this domino effect of chemical and electrical transmitters throughout the body. It changes our metabolic and catabolic processes. It influences us, body, mind, and spirit. But it starts with that electromagnetic principle.
Wow. Wow, I've never heard it explained so well. Thank you so much. That is so great. So when people know in your practice, do you lay the stones on people, or do you kind of give them a prescription, or how would you go about doing that energy healing work on people? Just because truly it's always been sort of like an intuitive practice with me, what they need, but you probably have a more scientific or more method in your madness than me. That way.
Truth be told, I think that everyone's circumstance is different. Everyone's lifestyle is different. Everyone's needs are different. Also, their accessibility of different tools is going to vary. So the things that I like to do are give people general guidelines, like plant seeds of inspiration. And then I hope that they take those and apply them to their own lives. So the simplest exercise that I can teach anyone, I'll give us two little freebies here. The first one I call a little crystal contemplation. So if you want to get to know a new crystal energy, you want to get a sense for how the stone can interact with you, what we want to do is two things. Distract the conscious mind, so that way it can't get in the way of the process, and then also engage our spirits with the spirit of the stone itself. And best thing to do, pick a rock, any rock, find some good natural lighting if you've got it, turn off all your distractions and just ooh and ah over that rock. Get to know how it feels in your hands. How does it look? How does light interact with it? If it's transparent, hold it up to the light. If it's not, then explore how light might bounce off the surfaces. Sense how heavy it is. Obviously be careful with delicate or sharp specimens. Don't injure yourself or your rocks. And while we do this, something is happening in the background where the conscious mind is so fixated upon the physical form of the stone, our subconscious or our superconscious or our unconscious, whatever model you're using, is able to be in direct communion with that stone. Another really simple thing that we do is called crystal breathing, where you take the stone and you place it on a target area of the body. So, if you're working with a third eye, you might place a stone right on the brow chakra. If you're working with heart energies, you might place it there. If you have pain in your shoulders, maybe you'll place the stone in an appropriate place, and imagine that wherever that stone is, you're inhaling through the stone. You're not only drawing in air, but you're drawing in life force and energy. You might view it as colored light, and just observe. Don't direct, just observe how it flows into the body, where it circulates, and how it flows out. You'd be surprised at what these simple techniques can do on such a profound energetic level. apart from that, of course, I suggest people carry stones, wear stones, meditate with stones, create crystal grids, lay them on the body, use them in crystal elixirs. These are all practices, especially that you'll find detailed in Crystal Basics, but they're kind of peppered throughout my other works as well.
So do you sleep with your crystals? Like put them under your pillows or put them under your mattress? Like I know some of us do.
I do. I have I have kind of conflicting thoughts about this one, especially when it comes to new stones. But one, we can go into energetic overload real easily while we're sleeping. So it's really imperative to take a less is more kind of approach. There are some stones that I really adore bringing to bed with me, but I share a bed with my partner and he doesn't always sleep as well if I have the same stones in there. So we have to be mindful of our surroundings and whoever else might occupy them. But I think it can be a really great opportunity to have this sort of dream time interaction with our crystals. I think this is a very passive technique and may not be as effective as the more conscious ones. But the other thing to remember, and I'm going to paraphrase from one of my teachers in the world of crystal healing, Samaya Astor, formerly known as Naisha Azian. She's the co-author of the Book of Stones. Absolutely fabulous in everything she does. But she likes to point out that taking your crystal to bed is about as effective as in getting to know your stones as taking a person to bed. There are probably a few steps we should be engaged with before we get there. Not that you can't have some fun, but it's not the best way to know someone.
Right.
Oh, that's so great. That's such a great analogy. I love that. You're talking about elixirs, and have you got some? I really encourage everyone. I'd like you to talk about your book a little bit, but Lisa Marini Wolfson says she absolutely loves your Crystal Basics book. I'm still waiting for mine to come from Indigo, but things are slower right now. But yeah, I was looking through it. Can't wait. So safety with crystals, so important. Is there some basic safeties besides don't put the pointy ones on your fingers? But is there anything else that you can, like a real warning that you would give to beginners?
Yeah, don't. This should go without saying, but if you don't know the chemistry and the interactions of a mineral, be mindful of how you use it. So, not everything is safe for your drinking water. That doesn't mean that everything that contains a substance that's otherwise harmful on its own is necessarily going to hurt you in your water. Here's a really great example. There are so many crystal lists of things that you shouldn't put in direct contact with water for making elixirs. There are indirect methods which are safe for every stone. But you'll find a lot of stones that contain aluminum on this list because aluminum can hyperaccumulate in the brain and is really bad for you. It can cause all sorts of problems later on in life. But one that we often see on these lists are things like corundum, which is a mineral name for ruby and sapphire. They're actually the same mineral species, and it's aluminum oxide, Al2O3. But if the aluminum could leach out of corundum by putting it in water, we wouldn't have a durable gemstone. You'd never be able to wear it and wash your hands. And it actually happens to be the second hardest of naturally occurring gemstones. It's a 9 out of 10 on that Mohs hardness scale. So just knowing what's in your stones doesn't necessarily tell you whether or not it's safe. It's knowing things like hardness and solubility and all sorts of other things. So I think it's good that these lists are overcautious rather than undercautious, but really there are a lot of stones that are perfectly safe to put in your elixirs just because they have one minute ingredient that is trapped in that chemical lattice, that crystal lattice, doesn't mean that it can harm you. But when in doubt, leave it out. Don't do direct contact with water if you're doing elixirs unless you absolutely know for certain things that can be broken or damaged or splintered by water are also bad ideas to put in there. And that's why the mechanical properties of crystals can be sometimes more important than the chemical ones when it comes to making elixirs. Something like black tourmaline, absolutely safe for water contact because of its chemistry, but certain forms of it will break down when they become hypersaturated or if they're exposed to temperature changes. So you might drink little granules of that, and that might not be a good idea. Not because they'll chemically harm you, but because they're sharp and they will hurt.
Yeah, it's so a safe way to make an elixir is to either put the stones around a glass container or put them in a sealed glass container inside the water. Have you found those ways?
Absolutely.
It's a safe way to. And the
Yeah.
same way within your bathtub too.
Mhm.
People like to bathe with them, but I'm always like really worried that they're going to go down the drain. So I have to put them in either a Ziploc bag so the water doesn't hurt them or it doesn't hurt the water. Because sometimes you put salts in your water, which can harm your crystals or your stones. And I don't know. How do you find? Do you ever bathe with them? Do you like putting them in your bathtub as well?
I actually like to use crystal elixirs in the tub rather than the stones themselves. So that way the
Oh,
stones
okay.
have already been imprinted with water, and then adding that water, that elixir to the bath water kind of extends it throughout. Absolutely have to exercise caution there, and you're going to find really detailed instructions for doing indirect methods that are safe for consumption with otherwise unsafe minerals inside the book. As well as in my second book, Crystals for Karmic Healing. You know, I really encourage people to exercise caution if they're unsure. But I'm a big bath fan, so I do use a lot of crystal energy and flower essence energy in my baths, but not necessarily by putting them in there with me.
Yeah, just maybe in your bath. Okay, that's really interesting. So you have these all detailed in your book. Have you got your book you can show us? Your
Yeah,
book?
it's right over my shoulder over here. Crystal Basics is the new one. So it's got a directory, A to Z guide of 200 gemstones. It's also got an index of healing properties separated by the physical, mental, and spiritual properties of them. And then the first half of the book is a how-to guide. What is crystal energy? What are crystals? How do they influence us? What is the relationship between humans and crystals? How to figure out what a crystal does based on its chemical composition, its crystal structure, its formation process, its color, all those other properties, and then what to do with them. How to program, how to cleanse, how to make grids, how to make elixirs. So you're going to find tons of information in the book.
Very cool. Definitely sounds like a
Kira,
book that's needed.
oh yeah, it sounds like a perfect book to have. Everyone should
Yeah.
have that book. And it's beautiful. Can you just open it up and show how beautiful it is inside?
Sure.
Because your books are beautiful. They're so professionally done, and they're so beautiful.
Thank you. I've got a really talented photographer. So we've got some diagrams in there of crystal systems. Yeah, my photographer is actually my partner. So I'm super lucky to have someone with, you know, an art degree.
Oh, yeah. Look at the board.
Yeah, so that's different forms of rhodonite there. But your A to Z guide is going to have tons of photos. Sorry, I'm not doing a good job of aiming at the camera here, but
Yeah,
got
you're doing pretty
grids
good.
and
That's
layouts.
Very
grids.
cool.
Oh, grids and layouts are so
Yeah,
cool.
There's your directory,
Oh,
so
look at
tons
that.
of stones.
Oh,
Mostly common ones,
beautiful.
but a few oddballs because they're personal favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Very beautiful.
I love that.
Kirat, he's watching us from South Africa. He says, does color change show sign of connection with the stone? Kirat, are you talking about if the stones change color when you have them with you? I'm not quite sure. Or says, do you know of any stones that change color as you have them?
You know, crystals can change color. And I think, you know, 9 times out of 10, when we have these observable changes in our stones, it's from pretty mundane things. Oftentimes, there are stones that are very sensitive to light and can alter. Things like amethyst, most forms of the heat-treated citrine, certain forms of beryl like aquamarine, kunzite is really light sensitive. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we've got stones that actually darken in like a vivianite, for example, is an iron phosphate. And it comes out of the earth a really pale, transparent blue-green and darkens to this really, really almost opaque, nearly black color as it's exposed to light. Other minerals are tenebrescent and can lighten and darken back and forth over time. So a lot of times when we see observable changes, it's from ordinary things, mechanical, optical, physical changes that just happen. Sometimes, though, we have things physics can't explain. You know, I've watched crystals become more transparent over time. And that's not something that physics says should be possible. So it's neither inherently good nor bad. It's probably a product of your relationship with the stone, but that's up to you to figure out. You are there having the personal relationship with the stone, and I'm not. So you're the one who's going to have the sensitivity to know whether or not you know, your crystal changed because it had too much light or not enough, or because you dropped it and a beautiful rainbow appeared from an internal fracture, or if it's because some sort of spiritual change that's being affected.
Now, I had someone tell me once a long time ago that you could actually clear, the more opaque crystal points that you get sometimes with quartz. They're not super clear, like some of them that you could Reiki them clear by just using energy. And they said that this one was opaque, and the more they used it, the clearer it got. Have you heard of that
Yeah,
happening?
there are a lot of anecdotal stories of that. I have a very small Earthkeeper crystal. Traditionally, they're very, very large, and one of the signs of activation in these crystals is that they clarify over time. And although the surface is frosty, the interior is almost transparent these days, and it was pretty darn solid when I got it many, many, many years ago. So these sorts of things do happen. I certainly remain, we'll say, a healthy skeptic, but I'm not cynical about it. I do know there are mystical, magical things that happen with their stones that science has no proper explanation for.
Very cool. You have great explanations. I have to tell you that. Like, you're really
Thank you.
making this super accessible, and I love your mindful approach to forming connections with crystals. I think my practice has always been just when I get a new one, I just spend a lot of time with it, kind of connect with it, things like that. But I really like how you're bringing in a more mindful, like just shutting down all distractions. Just I love the breathing part. That one especially really just vibed with me because it seems so simple, but really so powerful to really breathe through the crystal and allow that energy just to move through you and really connect with it. So I just wanted to, say that was really, really awesome. And I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the breath is so powerful. One of my friends likes to say that breath is the first gift we are given when we come into physical form. And one of my teachers in spirit, you'd say one of my grand teachers, a teacher of my teacher in the physical world, was Marcel Vogel. And virtually all of his techniques for working with crystals were centered around conscious, mindful breathing, very, very specific kind of like pranayama style breathing. And if we do this in the right way, not only do we have this sort of spiritual influence from our breath, but also the breath can take on a minute ionic charge. And it's that tiny little bit of electricity that actually yields measurable changes in the crystal lattice.
Wow. Very cool. Brings it to another level, really.
Absolutely.
I know I had a question I wanted to ask you, really, really awesome question. Especially right now, I think as people are becoming more and more aware of our relationship with crystals and, really the joy and the, I guess, just the amazing experiences you get to have when you work with them. What would you recommend as the top 3 crystals that, the collective should have?
So given the sort of energetic climate of the world at large these days, and not just in the here and the now with a pandemic going on, but I mean the sort of consciousness that's kind of overseeing things at the moment. One of the stones I think is so pivotal would be shungite. Shungite is a gentle grounding tool. It's a carbon-rich rock that comes from Karelia, Russia. It's got some unusual carbon molecules in it called fullerenes. What is really fun about this stone, compared to other grounding stones, it doesn't weigh you down. And I know there's so many sensitive souls who are maybe not as adapted to incarnation on Earth as others. And those really dense grounding stones, things like, black tourmaline and hematite, and even some of the gentler ones like petrified wood can still feel too heavy for them. Like you're dragging an anchor around with you all day long, forcing you to be in body. But shungite doesn't work that way. It's like this little tap on the shoulder that says, hey, have you grounded lately? Would you like to? Let me help you with that. So that's a great one. Plus it helps to filter out all the sort of harmful electromagnetic parts of the spectrum that don't serve us, not just from electronics necessarily, but emotions have electromagnetic counterparts. Thoughts have electromagnetic counterparts. So that can be really good when we're just a highly sensitive person overall. Anything rich in lithium would be wonderful. And the thing that has the greatest amount of lithium that is probably the most accessible is lepidolite, which is a member of the mica group. And mica imparts a sense of flexibility. The crystals of them, if you have thin sheets of mica, you can actually bend them back and forth very gently. But most forms of lepidolite are like dense little aggregates of those tiny crystals, so you can't really observe that at the macro level. But what I love about it is that it's so gentle and nurturing. I have a friend who calls it the giggle stone because it just imparts a sense of joy. But one of the chief lessons of lepidolite is like release, surrender. Just, give it over to source and things are going to work out. So it helps us with that sort of ego attachment that we've got. It helps us when we feel like we're just frazzled. It's got some really lovely heart opening and higher heart, like thymus opening energy in it too. And then I'm biased, but I'm going to say aquamarine, because aquamarine is one of the stones of illumination. It can help us really detox on a spiritual level, as well as in other places as well. And it just works on body, mind, and spirit in so many different ways. The world could not have enough aquamarine. If every person on the planet had a really fine, big, gem quality aqua, the world would be a better place.
I love that. Awesome recommendations.
Thank you.
Very cool.
Linda Bonebreak says, I have an opal that came from Australia and it reacts differently. When it gets wet, it turns transparent, and after it dries, the iridescent traits return. Can you explain why?
Yeah, so opals have a really high water content to them. Hi, Linda, by the way. Certain forms of opal are maybe more susceptible to this than others, but they're quite porous. So as they absorb more water, it influences the way light passing through gets scattered, and it's that sort of scattering of light that produces that play of colors that we associate with opal, that sort of fiery quality. Other forms of opal, like the Ethiopian opal, are so porous and they're already so gemmy and crystalline that they actually turn cloudy when they soak up water. So different opals from different parts of the world will behave differently. But a lot of gem rough will also have better transparency when wet. So before it's been cut and polished, a way to mimic what it might look like when cut and polished is if you get it wet. And then, of course, you buy this beautiful piece of gem rough at the show, and it's soaking wet, and it's see-through and clear and super saturated in color. And by the time you get home and unwrap it, it's cloudy and rough on the outside. So you can either get it polished or just keep moistening it to appreciate that color. But water can give us a glimpse into the inner world of translucent and transparent stones.
Very cool.
That is really great. I
That
didn't
is.
even know. Yeah, that's so cool. Sue Nightingale said, hi, Nicholas, enjoying your latest book. Do you incorporate the use of crystals into your Reiki practice? And if so, could you give an...
Hi there, Sue. Thanks so much for the question. I'm glad you're enjoying the book. I use crystals in my Reiki practice surprisingly little. If I can be frank, I think Reiki is such a perfect and whole system. It doesn't really need any outside help. That being said, I often give away Reiki charged crystals to my students, sometimes to my clients as well. There's a little bit of a historical precedent for combining the two as well. In the 1920s, it has been recorded, kind of anecdotally, that Usui Sensei, the founder of Reiki, would give Reiju, which was like the original form of attunement or initiation, to spheres of polished clear quartz, and give those to people who either couldn't visit a Reiki practitioner in person or couldn't learn it themselves, and they could place this Reiki charged stone wherever they needed to receive the benefit from it. So that's a practice I engage with also sometimes. But unless someone really asks, like, hey, I'd like these two forms of healing to be used at the same time, I generally kind of stick to one or the other, because I think both are so simple and so profound, they don't necessarily need help.
But you do use Reiki on your stones, as though. Is that one of the things?
Not very often, no.
Or
no. You can.
No?
It's just not part of my practice. I like to keep my Reiki nice and simple and traditional. It's such an adaptable and mutable practice, and that's one of its beautiful things. But I love when we kind of strip it down to the basics.
What about clearing stones? People often say they have to clear the energy or recharge the energy. What do you think about that?
So one of the fundamental properties that all crystals have, whether it's a beautiful gemstone or the crystals in our electronics or in our body or the gypsum in the plasterboard in our walls, is that they have memory. And this relates to kind of the mechanics of crystal lattices. And we won't go into great detail here, but suffice it to say that little imprints or echoes of the energy fields that crystals come into contact with are stored in the crystal lattice. Not every energy field it meets is necessarily aligned with the purpose that you've got for wearing it or carrying it or meditating with it. And so the purpose behind cleansing or clearing is to wipe the slate clean. If you are wearing a stone for love and joy, and you get on a crowded subway train and someone's having a really bad day and you can feel it, then your crystal's feeling that too. And it's not that the crystal is suddenly contaminated or polluted, but it has a better memory than we do. So the reason behind cleansing or clearing is to kind of, dust things off, get back to center, so that way we can reinstate our intention, our purpose. And there are cleansing methods that work because of the principles of physics. There's some sort of mechanism that we can measure, and then there are some that work without a measurable mechanism. And that doesn't mean they don't work. It just means that consciousness is the factor. And so it works because of a different kind of physics. So, there are lots of great ways to cleanse your crystals. You started the broadcast today with some smoke cleansing. I think that's a wonderful way to cleanse our stones. And, we can use whatever plants speak to us. We don't have to put a strain on certain plants. We can go into our local environment, into our garden. We've got lots of cedar and cypress here in Florida, and I think those make wonderful cleansing tools. There are other methods that are kind of universally workable on all your stones. I love using sound. It doesn't have to be beautiful sounds like singing bowls and Tibetan bells or anything like that. It can be your voice. It can be clapping. You can, make a wonderful Tarzan style yell at the top of your lungs with the intention that it reach out to all of your stones and cleanse them, and it's going to do the job. And then breath is my absolute favorite method. Breath is just so intentional and conscious, and it's a specific style of breathing. And I actually explain that in a whole bunch of my books, so you can find more details there. I don't want to exhale that forcefully into the mic and deafen our listeners, but suffice it to say, it's a short and sharp exhale through the nose. And that's going to help generate that ionic charge that helps to wipe the slate clean. But there are tons of methods. Do your research though. Some things like sun and salt and water can damage a lot of your stones. So you want to be mindful that the method you're using is appropriate for the stone that you're using it on.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we find it the hard way. I like putting on music to my whole room, because I have a few crystals and letting it clear them out. I clear the rooms lots of times with crystals.
Yeah.
I mean, with music, I can clear the water and charge the water. I want to use crystals on my sick dog. What would be the best way to do this? I tried placing some on him, but he wouldn't keep them on him.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I remember doing that with my cat too.
Yeah. So, this is one of those things that I'm in two minds about, because I definitely believe that we should have the opportunity to offer crystal energy to all of our loved ones, whether two-legged or four-legged or no-legged. So the key thing to remember is that it is not our job to police the energies of our feathered or furry or scaly friends. We have to kind of give them a sense of agency here. You wouldn't just wrangle up a grown human being, force them to lie down and place rocks on them. They would have a choice in that. So when it comes to our pets, maybe place stones in places they like to frequent. And if they want to lay around those stones, they will. Another thing that you could do that's much less invasive is to use safely prepared crystal waters or crystal elixirs and put a few drops in their drinking water or in their food. Another thing that we can do is use crystals on ourselves. And that way we hold that crystalline frequency. And as we spend time with our pets, they can benefit from that. I think there's a lot to be said about taking care of this house first, turning that energy inward, because as we vibrate on a more coherent or crystalline level, that influences all the other energy fields we interact with, including our loved ones, our pets, our people in our lives too. Just be mindful they have free will, and that we want to be respectful to them. Even though I know that when we offer crystal healing to our pets, it comes from a very loving place. There's still, we have to respect their autonomy. We have to see their inherent perfection in spite of whatever the outward physical health might look like. We have to give them a choice here.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a cat that he loved crystals, but I would put them on him and he'd automatically roll, so they would fall off. And I had just gotten a brand new quartz point, couldn't find it anywhere. It was under him. He had taken it and held it tight to him. So I was like, okay, that's yours. So I found offering a variety, like, letting them smell them, letting them, feel the energy of them. He would show me which ones he liked, because he would, head bump it or whatever. But I found that was really helpful. And then turning those into a pendant that you can put on their collar. Don't keep the collar on them all the time, but giving them that as well really was beneficial to him. And now the crystal's still with him. He passed away in December, but it's still with him now. So yeah, it was his crystal.
Oh, so sweet.
Yeah.
Teresa, do you have any questions for Nicholas? I know you love standing by.
Yeah, no, I like soaking in it. I gotta get that book. It's so exciting. I am so excited right now to get back to, because, I kind of been hoarding them and just loving them and having them around me. But I want to get into a relationship with them now. I want to grid them around myself. I'm so inspired by all that you've brought to us. So, no, I don't have a particular question. I am just thoroughly enjoying what you're bringing to us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Teresa.
Very cool.
So where can people find you, Nicholas? I know you have a lovely website, and I know we're kind of all cooped up here, but maybe you have more time for taking clients on through the internet. So give us a little short where everybody can find you and where they can find your books and etc.
Yeah. So I'm pretty accessible on social media. That's probably a great way to reach out to me. So I've got a Facebook page, which is The Luminous Pearl. Also on Instagram as The Luminous Pearl. There's a theme here. You can also visit my website, which is www.theluminous.pearl.com. And the website will be undergoing some revision in the near future. It hasn't been updated in a hot minute, so it doesn't even have all my books on there. But as far as finding my books, everywhere books are sold. In weird days like this, please consider supporting your local independent bookstore. They were probably going to be more than happy to fulfill mail orders or curbside pickup, depending on what the current regulations look like in your community amidst the pandemic. I do have some books available for sale here. So if anyone reaches out and wants a signed copy, I'm happy to ship those out to you. But I'm in the middle of writing another book, so I may not be able to take on a lot of clients at the moment. I'm happy to refer you to other places where you might find support. I'm really big on teaching people how to engage with the practices themselves, because it's that axiom of like, you can teach a man to fish, or you can give them a fish. So I'd rather teach you how to work with the crystals. That way you have the ongoing support in your life. And that's kind of like the driving motivation in all of my books, is to teach people how to think about stones rather than just using them prescriptively. Carry this stone to heal that condition. It's almost never so simple as that.
Absolutely.
That
And you
sounds
said
wonderful.
doing
And
an online thing that you might be opening up to doing more online webinar type things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for reminding me. In early May, I have an online class coming up at one of my most favorite venues in the New England area. It's a shop called Circles of Wisdom. And if you visit their website, and I believe it's as simple as circlesofwisdom.com, and check out their events, you're going to see that I'm doing my Crystal Basics workshop online. It'll be my first proper online class. So it'll give you all the options to register. If you've got any questions, you can reach out to the store and they'd be happy to help you out. I do have a bunch more seminars and other things coming up as well. The Shelter Animal Reiki Association is going to be hosting me for a free Zoom call tomorrow night. So that'll be Monday the 13th of April. And you can check out their Facebook page, Shelter Animal Reiki Association, for more details. It's a free event. You do have to pre-register just so you get the link to the Zoom conference, but I'm really excited about that. We're going to be talking about stones to help support us in these unusual days, and do stay tuned. Once things are business as usual, I'll be traveling again, and I'll be hopefully coming to a place near you to sign some books.
Awesome.
it's awesome.
Yes.
Julia, Mary Julian said, Nicholas is a master in his lifetimes and his books are transformational. I use his books in my energy practices and my daily life. Thank you, Nicholas, for your gifts. And yeah, we thank you too for your gifts and for sharing them, because don't hide your light under that bushel, Nicholas. Keep writing. We love your books.
Thank you. And thank you, Mary.
What is
it's
your
a
new
pleasure to
book
connect.
about? Can you tell us?
So
I saw the little hint you gave.
yeah, at the moment, I'm not permitted to give away too many details. I haven't really gotten to a concrete enough stage. I haven't signed any paperwork yet, so I'm going to kind of keep that under wraps. But it's a different subject than any of my other books. kind of related,
Okay.
generally speaking, to that world of integrative medicine and energy. And I'll be working with a different kingdom, you could say, than my other books, and I'm excited for it. It's really it's early on in the writing process, but I've made tremendous progress in just a couple of weeks. So I think this is gonna be one of my more quickly birthed books.
Awesome. That sounds excellent. We'll keep on the lookout for that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have you again when you're getting close to birthing it, or when it's
Sure.
ready to be birthed, or has just been birthed, whatever way you'd like to say it. So, Bex,
Yeah.
you have a question.
I do. The toughest
and
question
for-
of the whole interview, of course. If you had to choose a song to be the theme song of your life, what would it be?
You know, you warned me about this, and I forgot to do my homework. But yeah, I think I'm gonna just take a cop out and choose one of my trusted favorites. My absolute favorite band is Evanescence, and yeah, one of my favorite songs that they have done is called "Good Enough." And it's sort of coming into your own and finally feeling good enough and feeling worthy of the things that we've got in life. And thanks to the support of my wonderful partner, my amazing publisher, all my readers that are out there, my students, my family, my friends, my clients, you help me feel good enough. So thank you.
Beautiful. Good
Oh,
choice.
that's lovely.
Yeah, good choice.
So if people want to get a hold of you, they can get a hold of you through your website or through Facebook or Instagram. So Linda, if you want to get a copy of his book signed, perhaps you can just contact Nicholas through those venues, theluminouspearl.com. It's a beautiful website.
Yes.
And or go to his Facebook page. So anything else? Oh, the winner.
Yes, the announcements.
Bex,
We have so many
Bex.
now. We just have the one. Yeah. So again, a reminder that if you share this out, you have the opportunity to win a healing with either Rhonda, Teresa, or I. And last week, the winner of the Share It Out was Teresa Holmes. You won a healing session with Rhonda, so congratulations. Whoever shares out this week, whoever shares out the most, wins a 20-minute reading with me. It's an intuitive card reading, super fun, and I'm very excited to see who I get to hang out with. So share this out, invite your friends, do watch parties, whatever it is. We love it. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, Spirit Sessions of View of the Light. Hit the like and subscribe, and also on Facebook, Spirit Sessions of View of the Light, and you can like us there and follow us. And we have a new show every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Thank you again, Nicholas, for joining us.
Yes, thank you
And
so
we hope
much.
to see you again.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to everyone who's tuning in.
Stay safe,
Namaste.
everyone.
Have a blessed
See you
week.
next week.